showers, telescope movies play through the smoke. We watch rockets in heaven. I want it to be breaking you
her bubbly toes on the feet of a queen of the hearts of the cards, and her feet are all covered with tar balls and scars. It's a common or something that nobody knows, that her beauty will follow wherever she goes. Up the hill in the back of her house in the wood, she loved me forever, I know she could. Remember when you and me, how we used to be, just good friends, wouldn't give me none, but all I wanted was some. She's got a whole lot of reasons, she can't think of a single one that can justify leaving her. He got none, but he thinks he got so many problems, and he got too much time to waste. His dreams are like commercials, but her dreams are picture perfect, and our dreams are so related, though they're often underestimated. Simple as something that nobody knows, that her eyes are as big as her bubbly toes, on the feet of a queen of the hearts of the car, feet are infested with tar balls, and la da 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 da, la da 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 da, la da 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 da, la da 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 da. Well, I was eating lunch at the DLG when this little girl came and she sat next to me. Never seen nobody move the way she did. Well, she did and she does and she'll do it again. When you move like a jellyfish, rhythm don't mean nothing. You go with the flow, you don't stop. Move like a jellyfish, rhythm is nothing. You go with the flow, you don't stop. It's a common to something that nobody knows, that her beauty will follow wherever she goes. Up the hill in the back of a house in the wood, she loved me forever, I know. She la da 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 da, la da 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 da, la da 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 da, la da 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 da. If you would only listen, you might just realize what you're missing. You're missing me. You would only listen, you might just realize what you're missing. You're missing me. It's simple as something that nobody knows, that her eyes are as big as her bubbly toes, on the feet of a queen of the hearts of the car, feet are infested with tar balls, and la da 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 da, la da 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 da, la da 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 da, la da 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 da, la da 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 da, la da 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 da.
Please take your seats. The program is about to begin.
What's going on inside your head. Cause if we're sitting in the silence, what's not being said? I just try to keep you laughing, to keep a smile on your face, always gauging your reaction. So I know.
Please welcome to the stage, from Bloomberg Intelligence, Gina Martin-Adams, Global Director of Portfolio Strategy and Chief Equity Strategist, Eric Balchunas, Senior ETF Analyst, and Paul Goldberg, Director of Research and Senior Equity Analyst for Financials.
Hi, everybody. Hope you're enjoying your lunch. I'm Gina Martin-Adams from Bloomberg Intelligence, joined by my colleagues Paul Goldberg and Eric Balchunas. We're going to spend a few minutes going through our outlooks for our various asset classes and then look forward to joining you at your tables for a bit of chat. But first, we're going to run through my outlook for equities. I have 5 minutes to go through the entire outlook for the equity market, so buckle up. It's a very exciting time in stocks right now. We're going to talk about the five biggest risks to stocks coming into 2025. One of the biggest shifts, I think, coming into 2025, in particular relative to the last 2 years, in our models, we follow 17 different factors to identify direction for the equity market, but our models were saying this year was going to look different. And one of the biggest reasons this year was going to look different is because of sentiment. As of December, our Market Pulse Index showed manic sentiment in the equity market was pretty evident. Intriguingly, that manic sentiment survived through January and even February's correction. So with the recent weakness that we've had in stocks, our models are still suggesting there's a bit of mania out there. As a technician, this is incredibly important. To our outlook for stocks is I do believe tactically you want to pay attention to where sentiment is in the equity market, and the best time to put on risk is when sentiment is terrible. Second risk to note is policy. Obviously, this is hitting us in spades today with the tariffs as they're hitting the tape, but policy broadly is becoming a risk to U.S. equities on a number of fronts. Both upside and downside risks are likely to emerge from policy. We've done a tremendous amount of work on tariffs. There's a big deep dive from BI on your terminal today, so I would encourage you to look at that for the tariff risks across various industries and sectors. But for the market at large, tariffs are a risk because of the potential margin pressure that is likely to emerge with tariffs. We find that 40% of S&P 500 factories are now located outside of the United States. Almost half of cost of goods sold by U.S. companies come from outside the United States. So U.S. multinationals may actually be at the center of tariff risks. Now, this could be offset somewhat by tax policy changes over the course of 2025, but that's a huge uncertainty right now. Will we actually get any domestic supports enacted to offset the downside of tariff risks? The third thing to think about is the cycle. This chart shows you one of the most fascinating evolutions in financial markets, I think, over the last 50 years, is the economic cycle is getting longer, but the market cycle is not. We've had 5 major corrections in equity markets since the Great.
Swear my feet stuck to the floor when you made your way up to me. Did I know you from before? I think you had me from that moment. I wish I never let you go. And ooh, you set my head and heart on fire. And wish I could go back to that night. And ooh, you'll be forever on my mind. And ooh, you set my head and heart on fire. my glass of wine. You caught me some fireflies, told me their names and how much they love their life in a jar. You twist around me like vines, you rub the stars in my bright eyes, and you sold me a future from the ones you had in the trunk of your car. You said I think too much. You said I always mess it up. It was so easy to believe. I've always said the same things. Stay out, honey. I can see you're wicked, and I don't want your wicked love. Don't need what makes me feel addicted. I don't want your wicked love. Stay out, stay out. I don't want your wicked love. Stay out, stay out. I don't want your wicked, wicked, wicked love. You thought I didn't notice. You had me caught like a firefly. I'd abandoned my flight to be crawling around with these wings. But I won't forget this moment. Wait until you see, and how mighty the truth can be. How her hammer and nails chisel beauty from grotesque things. You say I think too much. Tell me I always mess it up. Well, I'll break the glass and see if the fireflies agree. Stay out.
Hey y'all, thank you so much for joining us for the special lunch session. My name is Brody Ford. I write about the tech industry at Bloomberg, and I mean what that's meant in the last couple of years is AI, right? Whether it's the vendors selling it, the companies implementing it, and I think in that that early cycle, that kind of early 2023, even through that year, a lot of us kind of got sick of the forward tense language, the we will ship, we will implement. And what's so exciting about 2025 is we're pretty much past that. I mean, a lot of this stuff is really happening in production. And so today we have 4 leaders from some of the most forward-thinking companies in this space going to kind of run us through what they're seeing and what they're doing. Feel free to take pictures, post quotes, whatever, on social media, LinkedIn. If you do, just, give us a shout out, give us a hashtag BloombergInvest. And yeah, we want to thank our title sponsor, Invesco QQQ. Could not happen without them. And with that, to set the stage, I want to introduce Ryan McCormick from Invesco.
Thanks very much, Brody, and thanks everybody for the time. Also, thanks Bloomberg. This has just been an incredible sponsorship. I think this is my 4th year at Bloomberg Invest, and it's an event that I look forward to every year, just with the caliber of speakers and the programming. I always take something away. So at Invesco, I'm a senior factor and core equity strategist. It's kind of a fancy way of saying I cover about 110 ETFs, and probably no one more well-known than Invesco QQQ. I'm really excited for the drivers of growth, because with Invesco QQQ, we try to figure out, well, what has been the drivers of growth for this fund. We're celebrating 26 years of live track record this year, and in some cases, we almost have to reverse engineer the story. It tracks the NASDAQ 100 index, which is comprised of the 100 largest companies listed on the NASDAQ exchange ex financials. And it's, when we look at performance, it's, well, why or what specifically has enabled these companies to be so successful? And we kind of land on the notion of innovation. These companies have been very innovative. We take it a step further. We try to quantify that innovation by looking at metrics like research and development spend. A lot of these companies spend more than their peers on R&D. That leads to considerable patent activity across a number of different disruptive technologies. And ultimately, we think that is the main driver for fundamental growth. But I think in this day and age, you can really boil it down to success is really tied to the ability to stay nimble or the ability to change. A lot of these companies look a heck of a lot different today than they did 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or even 3 years ago. So it's that ability to embrace and sort of cultivate change and stay ahead of changing consumer preferences, consumer trends, I think ultimately is what makes a lot of these companies successful. So with that, I'm very excited to hear about the drivers of growth from some of these leading companies, Bank of America, ServiceNow, Dell, and Goldman Sachs. And with that, I'll leave you to your lunch and to enjoy the rest of the programming. Thank you.
All right, we're going to be digging into what's driving growth at Bank of America. Aron Levine's going to tell us all about it. He is a president of preferred banking. But before we even dive into that, Aron, I have to tell you, it's been quite a day.
It has been quite a day, yeah.
So what I'd like to see if you can kind of set the tone. I mean, with so much volatility, tariffs, right, new administration, geopolitical concerns, what's the mood amongst some of your employees, among your clients?
Yeah, well, good to be with everybody. I mean, I think the first thing to remember is the mood has been very good. Put today aside for a second.
Okay.
Right? We started the year, consumer spending has still been strong. It's still 5 or 6% up year over year. So that's a good sign. And I know there's signs and there's different companies that came out today saying there might be some solace, but generally speaking, good, strong growth. You still have very low unemployment. You still have wage growth. You still have our clients. If you look at their balances and their banking and savings accounts from now versus 2019 pre-pandemic, it's still quite high, quite a level higher, and it was still up year over year. So what you're seeing, and especially in the cohorts that are sort of below 50,000, below 20,000, they actually have still some reserves. The upper levels, their money has moved more to high yield type alternatives, and so it's moved to the market. So I think you come into it with a fairly good set of stable things, right? But now, because of tariffs, because of increased uncertainty, you see what happens today, and people start reacting to it, and then we'll see where that goes.
And what about your employees? I mean, how do you talk to them throughout all this?
Yeah, well, our employees, their focus is always on our clients. And I think the thing that we keep reminding them is this is why you're important. And so we have 30,000 associates in financial centers across the country, and some of them work on lending, some of them work in small business, some of them are financial advisors. But all of them are there to support clients through these times of needs. And, whether it's major events like we had in LA, and our associates are proud to support the community during those times, or it's more volatile market days like today, the associates know that this is what they add value, and they're supporting clients, and this is what's important about what they do.
Now let's get into where you're finding the opportunities with all this talk that we've had for today. Where, in saying consumer banking, where are you seeing the trends among spending, among saving, among investing?
Yeah, so as I said, spending has been up, and investing, what we offer our clients at Bank of America is really in a whole continuum. So everything from self-directed through our Merrill Edge platform, which we've seen enormous growth over the years. We recently hit a big milestone of $500 billion, maybe we'll talk about, to then more guided, which is sort of a digital model, to then, of course, true advice through Merrill Lynch and the private bank. And I think what's really important is then clients of every level of wealth have someone to talk to, and really the focus in on thinking about long-term investing, thinking about what's important to them, what are their goals. And so what we hear consistently is clients who really want to sit down and talk to us about, I need to save for my child's education, I'm trying to save for retirement, I'm trying to think about buying a home, all these competing life priorities. And so that's the challenge. And, days like today just add some, maybe stress over thinking about it, but we keep making sure that we bring our clients back to, what are you saving for? What's the long-term play? You're not playing the markets. You're investing for a goal that you're setting for yourselves, and you can't think of it in terms of what happens today. It's what happens over 1, 3, 5, 10 years.
So that's what you're saying, more long-term as opposed to short-term.
Exactly. Our clients are not necessarily looking to just play the markets. They're looking to really do something over time, and they're setting a goal, and we can help them think through that goal, and then how does a day like today maybe adjust, but it doesn't change your strategy.
So you said these life decisions, so what's kind of affecting them to go toward that long term? Are there other factors affecting that too? I know people are talking about it on social media too all the time too.
Yeah. Well, I think what the hardest part is there's a lot of goals, there's a lot of competing priorities. Yeah. And I think that our clients, especially clients that have lower levels of investable assets, this challenge of how do I think about, I really need to save for my child's college education, but I also have to save for retirement. I've got to think about health care. And I think for us, where we work with our clients the most, and we have a tool called Life Plan, which allows clients to really think about it. Sometimes clients just don't spend the time, right? And it kind of gets overwhelming.
We're busy.
We're busy. And, people's financial lives is always a thing that say, well, I don't really love talking about that, or I don't feel I know as much. So I think the obligation we've always felt we had was education. And it's really educating clients on what are the different options, and then B, how to think about return and risk over time, and how to think about different priorities.
Now let's get to that milestone that you quickly mentioned. So this is your consumer investments, surpassing $500 billion in assets. What was driving that?
Yeah, so to give context, when we launched our consumer investments business, known as Merrill Edge, as a brand, in 2010, we had combined some legacy from Bank of America and legacies from Merrill Lynch models, and had about $60 billion in assets and about 700,000 accounts. So between 2010 and here in 2025, we now have grown that to $530 billion and about 4 million accounts. And the North Star had always been about thinking about a Bank of America consumer client. They need banking, lending, and they need investing. And providing a platform, both self-directed for those who would like to do it themselves, and for us it was always world-class research that we were providing. And we have a guided model, which can be known as a robo, but in our case, our chief investment office is who sets the portfolios, and we have access to advisors in our centers. So it's really been about that combination of bank and brokerage, and having the ability to invest on a platform that we've over the years invested in, and it's won a lot of awards, and it's a great way for clients to access the markets. And that's been what's fueled that massive growth over the last 10 years.
Now, you mentioned the clients who are using. Who exactly is using it? I mean, is it Gen Z? Is it boomers?
Yeah, actually, for us, it's really the whole gamut. We started off, again, because a lot of it is Bank of America customers, and so I'd say about 70% are sort of in the Gen X boomer. But over the last 3, 4, 5 years, we've seen a much bigger rise in Gen Z and millennials. So about 15 to 20% now is the younger generations. And so it's really the whole gamut, which is important. But what you're seeing more and more, and maybe fueled by social media, is younger investors who are saying, okay, I kind of started off looking at the markets as a quick, almost gambling play model. Now I want to think about it a little bit differently as I'm maybe getting a little older, getting my first job. And so we get a lot of those clients who've just gotten their first job, and they're saying, I really want to start investing for the longer term.
Now, what about what sets it apart from the competition? Because there's other, similar things. Is it the tech behind it?
Yeah, the tech was one we're proud. We built it internally. We have an amazing technology organization run by a gentleman named Aditya Bhasin and his team. But it's three things I would sort of point out. One, it is this ecosystem and this bank brokers integration. So it's all in one place, obviously bankofamerica.com. It's all digitally driven, but it's also combined so clients can look at all of their accounts in one place. That's certainly helpful. It's got a great client experience, so clients can actually talk to somebody. Access to advisors, as I said, which is rare for these more online brokerage spots. And then the reality of 3,700 financial centers around the country where someone can walk in, and even though they're investing in a kind of a digital platform, there's access to an advisor. And I think the other key part to our success has been when there's clients that have bigger need, more complex needs, greater wealth, our ability to partner with Merrill Lynch financial advisors or the private bank and their advisors, so make sure clients are getting what they truly need and not fitting them into a type of a model or an offering that isn't best for them. So we've really worked hard to make sure that across the continuum, clients are working with the type of relationship they need.
And we've heard so many stories. I mean, you're talking about digital. You're talking about, brick and mortar stores. Where do you see most people going now? I mean, you've heard stories about, we're closing branches, or maybe this is going to happen. Is there a reason for all that? Kind of explain.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I will just say, bar none, branches at financial centers are still critically important. Right now, the question is, what are those branches used for? So the model from 10 years ago in which people were doing transactions, walking into a financial center, standing in line to deposit a check or to pay a bill or to do any of those things, that's cut in half. So from 2019 to now, half as many of that traffic is in the centers. But what's been replaced, and what we were one of the leaders to do, and we started introducing what we call financial centers back in 2013 and 14, is clients coming in to sit down with a financial advisor or sit down with a lending officer, talk about a mortgage or a small business banker. And so it's really, if you look at how we've redesigned our centers, the sort of teller line is in the back, and it's used less and less. And the entire front is sort of very nice office space. And clients are using the center as a place for guidance and advice. And that's really the transformation of how it's being used. So we still have over 600,000 clients a day coming to centers across the country, but the reason why they're coming has changed. A lot more of them make an appointment. A lot more of them are coming in and saying, I already took care of my deposit through an ATM, or I did it on my phone, but now I want to talk about what I was saying before. Well, what is my way to think about the future, and how can you guys help me? So the whole nature of the centers have changed, but it's become more relevant than ever. And an interesting stat, because I think everyone always assumes young people don't want them. Right. What students say to us, and we have a huge part of our practice is opening up accounts for students, is they say, I may never actually walk into a financial center, but I want to know there's one there. Right? So just the presence and the brand and knowing we're there is very important to both young and old.
So is it more of like a reshuffling, say, like putting the centers in the center of the community? Yeah.
Well, yes. Well, it's always about location being really important, but it's the design of the centers is very different. So if you walk into one of our centers now, you'll walk in and it will look like, sort of Class A office space. And you'll say, where's the branch? Right? And so I think, and then there's obviously a lot more technology. We have someone who greets you at the door with an iPad and can do a lot of the things you might want right then and there, and then introduce you to someone to have a more sort of complex conversation. So it really is just changing the nature from all the transactional elements of a branch is absolutely moving to digital or ATMs. And the financial center themselves is a place clients can come and really talk about some of their financial priorities.
Okay, so let's stick with technology. How else is it changing the way, clients do business? I know there's AI as well. Yeah.
Well, look, for us, Erica, which is probably one of the earliest and actually useful forms of AI, early AI, we've had now 2.5 billion, with a B, 2.5 billion uses of Erica since we launched it. And I think it was 670 million just last year alone. So what does that mean? So someone who used to make a phone call and ask what's my balance is, or used to have to go find it, they can just say, Erica, what's my balance? And it pops up. Or Erica, move money, or Erica, do this. So this idea that now all that convenience and all those transactions and people sort of being able to, however many times they want, find out about their accounts, that's clearly very important. And that keeps growing, and Erica keeps learning, and there'll be new generations of AI to then allow her and that program to give more and more sort of advice and help people. But other than that, I think we're looking at lots of use cases across the company for efficiency, right? So our call centers, our technology organizations, every one of them is using AI now to test it and see how would it apply. And I think over the next couple of years, you'll see more and more actual uses of it.
Can Erica empty the dishwasher for me? Because I can't get my kids to do it.
No,
Can't do that, okay.
We put that on our to-do list.
Thank you. The way people make payments, transfer money, that's changing too. Zelle is a big part. How is that, I guess, are more people using it now?
Well, yeah. Zelle there's 3 times more payments made through Zelle than checks. Right, and so Zelle has become the main way in which people, because again, it's all the different banks have come together, and so it has massive usage, and the way in which people transfer money between them make it so much simpler. The key has been the constant need for us to improve safety, improve soundness of it, really help people avoid fraud and avoid scams, and so we've put a lot of energy across the platform to make sure we do all the right things to help clients. But it's been an incredibly powerful tool and really change the way in which people transact with each other.
You mentioned fraud, so dig a little bit deeper. What is Bank of America doing to help deal with that?
So a whole host of things. Anytime we have the ability for you to set up alerts, and we have a massive infrastructure of team that is constantly looking at what's the behavior, and is there anything that just happened that deviates from the behavior that they can trigger it, send an alert so that the person says, oh, this is me or it isn't me. So that's one thing. We have what we call a security center on our application, which allows you to go through a whole series of steps to protect yourself, and it kind of gives you a step-by-step saying, here's the 10 things that you should do. Here's what you can do on the site, double authentication. Here's different, and then a whole series of tips. And we're constantly sending out, to our clients, hey, be aware of this, be conscious of this, make sure you don't do that. So it's a broad effort that we can do, and it's an effort that is in our financial centers, right? So we have triggers in which someone comes in and we'll say, are you sure about this? And make sure we try to educate them right then and there, our call centers and digitally. So it's something that we have to tackle every day.
Okay, and I want to end with a two-parter. So where do you see the banking industry headed? The first part is, what are your concerns, and then the second part would be, what you're most excited about. So let's start with your concerns first.
Yeah, the concern I touched on a little bit before. I mean, the idea that, kids in their teens and even younger are getting introduced now so rapidly to investing through social media, which can be not investing on fundamentally understanding how companies work, not understanding fundamentally about diversification and long-term investing. And so, for us, the education part of it is just really important. We've had for years a program called Better Money Habits. We've had a whole series of other programs to try to make sure that as, especially younger people are entering in and are interested in the markets, and it's getting fueled by that they understand, A, the risks, and B, the difference between just, making a bet on something like you'd bet on a sports event versus actually understanding how to invest for the long term. So that's something that, we're very focused on being part of that solution.
And what are you excited about? What keeps you up at night?
Well, look, I think that the industry continues to be a great pillar of success and foundation. The strength of the banks right now in terms of capital and just liquidity and the strength, our ability. At the end of the day, we spend our day helping someone start a small business. We help people buy a home. We help people save for college. And I think that's what's important. For me, I have 40,000 associates around the country, and when I get to visit them, how they feel about the fact that they've just helped someone to do those things, that's really what's important. At the end of the day, it's about helping people with their financial lives. And then the work that we do in the community, times like this, I couldn't be more proud of what the team did out in LA and in other parts of the country. And so that's what I get excited about and what I appreciate my organization does.
Well, we appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
right, so next up we have 3 leaders in very different roles in very different companies, and that's why I'm so excited to have them all here in one place, kind of running through what we've been seeing in this current moment. We have Marco Argenti from Goldman Sachs, Jackie Canny from ServiceNow, and John Rose from Dell. And so, you know, as we were talking about, 2025 is when AI tech's really in deployment. I mean, it's real at this point. It's not a hypothetical. And so I think I always love to start with just, you know, give us one kind of cool, tangible example of how you're using it today. And I'd love to start with you, Marco.
So first of all, thank you for having me here. So you want an example of how we're using generative AI in particular, or
yeah, within the company, you know,
or any form. I think one thing that I want to start with is it's been really a game changer in the developer experience, not only efficiency. I think there is more profound implications of generative AI than just thinking, hey, you know what, my developers are going to be 10%, 20% more efficient. It actually redefines what it means to be an engineer. It just requires a whole set of new skills. It's almost like comparatively to go from you know, people that used to flip bits on machine code to programming in a high-level language like Python, okay? And now it's about planning, it's about how you prompt. It's almost like having a coworker. And in fact, if I look at I mean, I've been running engineering teams now for, you know, too many years, and I tell you that this is probably the most profound transformation that I've seen, because it actually is not a matter of gaining efficiency. It's actually a matter of multiplying the resources that you have at your disposal. So I generally, and I make this kind of analogy. If you asked me like 10 years ago, how many servers do I have, I would have given you an exact number. If you ask me today, I can tell you I don't know. Maybe 10 minutes ago I had a lot, and right now I have very little, because the cloud kind of goes up and down. I think in like 10 years, CIOs will tell you the same answer when you ask them, how many developers do you have? I'm going to say, I don't know. Yesterday I had 100,000 developers, because, you know, but maybe 90% of them were virtual, were agents. And I think that's really the step where you see that AI is no longer suggesting code, but is actually doing things for you. And having lived through this transformation, we've employed generative AI now to, you know, like the vast majority of our 12,000 developers. We're starting to see really a transformation of how people approach what it means to build software.
Nice, thank you. And Jackie, ServiceNow has one of the most kind of forward-thinking visions for how customers will deploy generative AI with Now Assist. But I'm curious, you know, leading the company's people operations and teaching them how to use this stuff, really, I mean, what does it look like for you?
Oh, well, that was a great setup in what you said for what I talk about in the people role.
Yeah.
You know, we have, I think never before in my career have seen so much opportunity for human capital transformation. Like, we talk a lot about the tech, but really what it can do for people, and then ultimately your business has never been tackled before at the scale that we have. So I think about 4 things. There's the talent that we have. So how are we nurturing, hiring, bringing through the people that we need? We have 27,000. When I started 4 years ago, we were 16,000. So it's this pace that you have to keep up with. There's obviously the technology. So what are we doing to teach people the technology that they may not have come into the company with? There's the accountability that we believe people need to have. Like, you need to be accountable if you work at ServiceNow to know that you have responsibility to understand AI to whatever degree in your job. You need to do that. So my team, equally as much as our engineering, our product team, and our go-to-market team. And I look at this as a whole company action. We're doing AI 101. We're doing AI further when you have to have more skills. We're taking assessments. We're building an institute. We're taking external forces. I use advisors to help me, because I certainly haven't grown up as an AI-first organization. And how do we systemically change the company? Because we have to transform too. We're only 20 years old, and I see that need, and it starts with our people.
Nice. And John, Dell has been going through a really interesting transformation, you know, supplying a lot of the infrastructure that's powering the AI today. But, you know, looking within your company, I mean, what are the initiatives that you found to really kind of fuel ROI?
Yeah, I have two roles. I'm the CTO of the entire company, which is about the long-term strategy and navigating the industry, and then I'm also the Chief AI Officer, which means I'm my own customer. I have to make sure we are customer zero. It's very interesting. The first year of generative AI, it was all experimentation because we didn't have tools we could even use. Last year, beginning of the year, we had RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, which allowed us to have like enterprise data within the AI ecosystem, but it was still kind of hard. This year, the ISV ecosystem has matured. We are seeing more off-the-shelf capability, more things that are consumable by enterprises. And so inside of Dell, that's translated into last year was the year that things went into production. And we took a very orderly approach. When we started the journey, there were 800 projects. It was chaos. Where we ended up was there are 4 areas we care about that are our priority: sales, services, engineering, and support, or engineering and sales. Sales, services, engineering, and support. There we go. Okay. Anyway, those 4 were the priority, and the reason for them was that they are the source of impactful ROI to the company. Those are places where we can make more money, we can control costs in a meaningful way, we can improve our profit margins, we can reduce risk in a material way. And the result is, literally 2 weeks ago, we declared victory on those 4 areas. We had major projects across all 4 of them. They are now all in production. The net is, today I have 40,000 services professionals that are augmented by a tool called Next Best Action that basically takes the collective wisdom of Dell and our real-time telemetry and injects it into every services transaction we have. 70% reduction of human intervention, dispatch rates are down, errors in shipments are down, customer sat is up. Every curve that mattered got bent by that one particular activity and services. In the engineering side, we adopted coding assistants and other tools. And I love the example. We actually claim today there's no such thing as an entry-level engineer in Dell. You come in, and in this environment, you are almost immediately productive, which is a huge transformation in how engineering works. Number 3 on the list, though, is around the supply chain. We have one of the largest global supply chains in the world, and it's driven by data. And it used to be very hard to use those tools, and today they are automated inside of our model farms. They are using generative interfaces to interact with them, and now using things like agents to actually make them work with each other. And then the last one, which was interesting, the longest poll was our sales force. How do we make our salespeople better? What does it mean? Do we create virtual salespeople? That's not really the right answer. Or do we make them more productive? And we discovered there was a particular metric that 40% of our sellers' time was spent preparing for sales meetings, sorting through content, getting organized. And if that wasn't a generative AI use case, I have never found one. And so, interesting enough, 2 weeks ago, we turned on 20,000 users across our sales force using something called Dell Sales Chat, which likely is going to hand our global sales force back a material amount of time to spend more time with customers. I was very happy that, sometimes you set a goal. We set a goal. These are the 4 areas we want to move forward on. 2 weeks ago, we can kind of declare victory. And the material impact on the company has been significant. You can look at our performance. We had our earnings call last week, and you can see our revenue's up, and our costs are down, which is a very interesting thing. And it's not all technology, but people, processes, and technologies are becoming a really significant lever to improve productivity of enterprises like ours.
Super interesting. One gripe I hear, whether it's from the vendors, the CIOs, is, man, I built this really cool tool. People aren't clicking as much as I want them to. How do I get people to really feel like they want to use this tool and it's useful? Marco, you say about, your 12,000 devs have access to the AI assistant, but is it, do you not have folks that are like, I don't need this, I'm a good coder?
Yeah, so adoption is actually the key. And it's like every new technology, and I've seen that before with cloud, I've seen that before with mobile, I've seen that before with serverless, was an example that I was directly involved with when I was at Amazon. You immediately have a distribution curve of you have the believers and the early adopters, and then you have the skeptics and people that just don't want to change their habits. And in fact, given what I was saying before, that generative AI for most of us is really about changing our behaviors and our habits, even some of the most exercised muscle groups that we have, in a way that is completely different in many cases. And so one of the things that we've done is, first of all, to set up a very thoughtful set of measures to understand actually what do we want to actually look at, what do we want to measure in order to understand what success looks like. So is it, for developers, is it the number of commits? Is it the velocity with which they burn down the backlog? Is it how do you measure the quality of the code? What percentage of the code has been accepted, and so on and so forth. For our junior bankers, for example, is looking at how much time does it take to prepare a briefing, for example, to prepare a pitch deck, and what percentage of the actions have been substituted by automated actions. It's almost like we did what's called the time and motion study. You're looking at actual actions using tools that are looking at what people are performing on the screens and all that. And so with that, then you kind of form an opinion of what success looks like. And in our case, for developers, was, for example, to achieve around 15 to 20% of efficiency, depending on the field. And then at that point, it's about activation. And activation is using kind of familiar techniques that work with the community. One of them is, first of all, setting clear targets so people know what is expected from them. And B, also using a little bit of peer pressure. So what we do is, we actually have people engaged in showcasing what they do in front of large groups. We do competitions. We've done even a format that we called almost like Shark Tank, where people were presenting to a panel what were the most innovative ideas. And I tell you, especially with developers, the peer pressure works, especially if you have people that are considered and respected as some of the top developers. You definitely don't want to be less than them, and so I think that is kind of starting to create a snowball effect. And so it's a combination of that, but I think at the basis is doing your homework with regards to what you're measuring and what success looks like and what are the targets that you're setting.
Interesting. And Jackie, you recently added a pretty interesting second title, Chief AI Enablement Officer, which is so important right now. How are you approaching the new role?
Well, it says a lot about Bill McDermott, our CEO, and the board for seeing this as an imperative to put in one of his direct reports as title, and then to put it with the Chief People Officer, I thought was pretty innovative, but really at the heart of what change comes from. We can go back in our career, any technology that came, whether you were going from on-prem to the cloud or the cloud to now AI, there was always a change. And if you didn't bring the people along, it would let you down. And just like you were saying, how do you get adoption? You have to think about what's the experience we're driving for our people, our customers, our partners, and our community. We need 3 million learners in the next 2 years to be able to deliver on the revenue plans that we talk about. So this is nothing but the heart of our business to drive. And we use our own technology to do a lot of this work. So I believe in a product mindset that you think about what are we shipping to those people, our employees, our customers, our partners, our community, so that it is consumable, that they can learn our technology, that they can experience work if they're working at ServiceNow in a way that they get their jobs done faster. They're rapidly enabled, they're engaged, and the proof for me is that our attrition rates are sub 4% for high performance, and we had 1.6 million applicants last year for 5 million jobs. So we're resonating in the market, we're resonating with our people, they're staying, and they're super engaged. And I don't take that for granted. It's this continuous, insatiable curiosity that we have to deliver learning, enablement, experiences in a way that they can, go get an Uber. And that's not easy to do, but it's absolutely at the heart of what we need to do.
Is it all carrot, no stick? So it's it's always just, hey, look how cool this tool is. It's never, hey, if you're putting together a pitch deck, you gotta use some element.
There's definitely some sticks, I have to say, and including in my own team. I hold the bar for the HR team just as much as we do for the rest. And there's often a quicker way. It doesn't matter what generation you're from. Everybody has the same levels of ability to be curious. And the ones that show design thinking, that get the products right, that deliver on their ROI, their P&Ls, they are the winners, and we are high performance. There's no shying away from that. But it is a culture that I'm trying very hard to create that you can experiment and try. We have use cases that fail, that succeed, but keep showing progress.
Nice. And John, you mentioned, 4 kind of pillars. I'm curious of these, which job has changed the most?
Well, I think they're all changing. I mean, fundamentally, one of the things that we realized when we started to figure out where to apply AI at Dell, I mentioned the first pillar is we're going after ROI. Make no mistake about it. We want financial impact to the overall performance of the business and the global market. But right behind that, the second thing was we didn't want to apply AI to processes that weren't the processes we wanted going forward. In fact, one of the mistakes people make today with generative AI is they use these tools to hide a bad process, to augment something that is wrong. Like if you have an army of people just literally transferring data between one system and another because you haven't figured out APIs, putting a generative AI system on top of that is just masking a fundamental problem. So we had another dimension, which was something called Modern Dell, which is we asked and answered this question of, are these the processes that we want in the future? And fundamentally, I will not implement an AI project if it hasn't gone through that process, if it isn't aligned to a process that I really care about. And it turns out when we do that, the value is when you actually lean out a process and ask the question of how it should work in the AI era, you end up with a way easier process to apply AI to as opposed to kind of hiding and fixing the sins of 20 years of legacy. And so and because of that, all four of those areas which meet that criteria have changed profoundly. The way we do software development is just changing everywhere. The way we do services, we're seeing a huge shift of human interaction to machine-driven interaction with customer preference. The customers like it. Turns out in services, the number one thing that matters is, do you get the right answer fast? They don't care if it's a chatbot or if it's a person. They just want the right answer. And if I can make them equally good at it, they bias towards the one that's easiest to consume. And that has a huge impact on supply chain. It's just fundamentally that we just do that as a matter of course. We have such a big supply chain that constant technology investment and, the results speak for themselves. We have a very good supply chain, and then in the selling side, we'll see. And it's a great observation around the learning process. We think the uptake in sales will actually be faster than the others, and it's because we've had an extra year to train our people. We ran something called Dell AI Fundamentals, and it was an optional course. It was 4 modules, took actually a reasonable amount of time. We put it out to the whole company, said, you don't have to do this, we'd like you to. 100,000 people did it. And it took reasonable time. We wanted people to understand what RAG was and what an LLM was and why these things work. And the result is we're going to watch really closely the sales uptake. And my guess is it'll be significantly faster than engineering, which was more put it out there and see what happens, versus an environment where people are well trained, they're comfortable with it, they understand it. There will be a few sticks, but mostly it's carrot and training. And I'm a big vocal advocate that if you don't have a skilling strategy in conjunction with your technical strategy, you're kind of hoping it's going to work. But if you have a strong skilling strategy and you're educating your workforce, and they understand the process transformations, they understand the technology to a usable level, the adoption cycle just generally correlates to be faster.
Nice. Marco, you're leading developers in a pretty highly regulated industry. Most people in here also own regulated industries. How does that impact the way you approach it?
I think you need to use regulation to your, and also internal regulation to your advantage, because at the end of the day, there is more that we don't know about AI than what we know, and I think that's true for everybody. It's something that, it's a new super powerful technology that is like 2 years old at best. And if you think about agentic technologies, maybe 6 months old, and the research or deep research type of technologies, maybe 3 weeks old. And so, one thing that we've been doing is really trying to apply responsible AI in multiple ways, not just as a policy, but also as a characteristics or a feature of the platforms that we built around those models. A little bit like software development, right? Where you build, in the modern days, you build a pipeline or a CI/CD or SDLC, or you want to call it, to go from your desktop to production that embeds a number of controls. And if those controls fail, you don't push to production. It's the same thing around AIs. So imagine that GS AI platform that does what a power plant does around nuclear reactors. So you have the control rods in a way. And more specifically, you secure models from any type of data exfiltration, especially if you're using them inside the cloud provider, maybe in a multi-tenanted way. You're able to route between them so that you kind of get the best of all. And then you start developing controls around which data you can access. For example, what are the entitlements? In every bank we have the wall between private and public. And when you're using a model, especially if you're using the same model for both, you need to make sure that someone asking a question on the public side doesn't get an answer that is informed by the private side. And of course, entitlement is such an important thing there. That we have the right connections to the data sources, where the AI just doesn't make those data sources in a way, taking them at face value and better, but you have mechanisms for grounding. Grounding means you're checking some other source. You're checking the web, you're checking internal databases, so you apply a filter before you just spit out an answer. You have controls inside the inputs and outputs. For example, prompt injection is a thing, is a new threat vector, and you need to protect against that. So we set up, from a governance standpoint, a sort of a two-body system where we have one group that essentially asks the question, should we do this? And it's more like a business group that says, okay, this initiative could have a high ROI, so it's worth investing. But then we establish a control group that asks the question, how do we do it? And then make sure that every group goes through a set of questions that need to be answered, such as, what kind of data are you using? Is it any APIs? Is there any, what users are you using? What roles can we use this? And also, what kind of biases do you see? How do you protect yourself from inaccuracies? Is there a maker-checker control? And so on and so forth. So robust apparatus, because I tell you that the natural tendency for people when they get super excited about a new technology, but in this particular case, something that sounds so good and credible, is just to basically kind of, suspend any disbelief.
And how often does that control group say, well, oh, come on, we can't do this?
We had, hundreds of use cases, and we ended up, approving a few dozens. And so there is maybe I would say that, maybe over half of that, they go back to the drawing board. And it is essential at this point to do that. And by the way, no matter if you're regulated or not, you need to self-regulate around AI. That is my single, piece of advice that I want to just offer to you. Because, those AIs make things really credible, really plausible. Sometimes mistakes are very hidden in things that are absolutely, look really, really good. And I like to say, poison, garbage in, poison out. It's not even garbage in, garbage out. Because that garbage doesn't even smell like garbage anymore. And so you eat it, and then you feel sick. You need to be careful that you don't get food poisoning from your AI.
Watch out for that food, Jackie, agentic is the big word of the last 6 months. Obviously, ServiceNow is one of the kind of leading companies pushing that forward. And, the promise of agentic is that, there's some workflows that AI can kind of do itself. You don't need a human watching it the entire time. Within the company, what are you comfortable saying, all right, agents can handle this. We don't need someone just poring over it at all moments?
Yeah, so similar to what Marco talked about, we have governance and ways of sifting through these use cases as well. And we have had a good number of customers, almost 1,000 in just the last few months, that have signed up for agentic AI products. So we have adoption happening outside. And I think a lot of our customers are looking to us to how to think about that. And we're really pushing the envelope. There's opportunity where we've used AI and generative AI in the example of an HR business partner to assist them to what's the next best action, maybe about a person or what they should be doing. But now there's an opportunity where that can close the loop on the decision and say, not only is this person in your team ready to be promoted, they've demonstrated that they have skills, now they're going to get a raise, this is their new title, and it's closed. So creating a system where agentic AI can make that great is where I see the future for a lot of our work, particularly in HR, and I don't think it's that far away.
Nice. Now, John, I think a lot of people, when they think about, hey, we're scaling up AI, they assume that their public cloud bill goes up. They're going to throw a bunch of money at AWS, Oracle, or whatever, but, Dell sells the AI infrastructure in many cases, and you're your own customer. And so I'm curious, how do you optimize cost when you're running a lot of this stuff on-premise?
Well, first of all, running it on-premise is almost always lower cost because you have control over your infrastructure. Now, the cloud era was great for certain things. If you have a workload that might be gigantic one day and zero the next day, having a flexible consumption model is a great idea. Our experience has been when you AI enable your service motion and you start deploying not just chatbots but agents, which are orders of magnitude more resource intensive, these things run at high utilization levels for a long time. They don't stop working periodically unless you have no support problems, which is very unlikely. And so when you start talking about high utilization, the need to access your proprietary data directly, doing that all within an environment that you can control that's dedicated to you, just fundamentally has always had foundational cost advantages. You know, there's a term called repatriation. Repatriation is the act of you adopted a cloud model and then you looked at it carefully and realized some of the workloads in that cloud model just simply don't require all the services of the cloud. And if you move them into an environment that maybe is in co-location or somewhere that is under your control, you can completely change the cost curve and the performance curve of it. That's going to be the world of AI. It will be a multi-cloud world. There will be public clouds. There will be private environments. There will be edges. There will be devices now for the first time with AI PCs that are all part of that end-to-end infrastructure, and picking and choosing where you run things from a performance perspective matters, from a cost perspective matters, and then the biggest issue is it matters from a regulatory and risk perspective. This is really incredibly valuable activity that you're describing. In fact, you know, I'll give Jensen some credit for a comment he made a couple of years ago. He talked about, you know, what is an enterprise? And he said an enterprise is two things. It's proprietary data and unique skills. That's what makes an enterprise an enterprise. First generation of AI with chatbots, it unlocked the proprietary data. The purpose of a chatbot, a RAG-based system, is to take proprietary data and make it generative. Great, we did that. The purpose of agents is to take those unique skills and digitize them. And when you do that, you are talking about an incredibly strategic asset that you need to maintain control over. You need to make sure it is something that you can preserve and reclaim if you need to. And so as we think about the strategic nature of AI, it's not just the cost equation. It's the control aspects of it. It's the ability to basically make sure that this system that is going to become the engine of your enterprise is fundamentally under your control, is predictable on the cost structure, and is working on your behalf. Doesn't mean you won't use public clouds. It just means that you have to be very, very thoughtful and strategic about your infrastructure choices in the AI era. This is way different than deciding to run a database in a container on a public cloud.
Yeah, and Jackie, I want to come back to you. As a chief people officer, there is so much talk around how does AI change our labor force planning? How is it for you all? Is it we need more salespeople, less engineers, vice versa? How do you think about it?
Yeah, we invest quite a bit in early in career talent too, which is another question I often get. And I think philosophically, you have to decide as a company, what is your structure for resourcing? We will always have a place for early in career. It's not something we're looking to, sort of take out of the pyramid, but to your point, make them productive the day they get there. So how are you taking everybody who joins your company, whether they don't have experience working, but they have great intelligence and desire and want to grow, or is it somebody that you're pulling out of another company that's never worked in your company? The shortening of that time in a technology company, a retailer, anyone is gold. It's money for the bottom line and the top line. And I think that's how we have to think about a workforce plan. Now, you can't think about a workforce plan without AI, because I think that would be naive, because it is taking parts of jobs. So again, who are you hiring? How are you hiring them? What are they learning? How are they training? How are they ramping very quickly? And that's your measure of what I think the new workforce model will be.
Nice. And Marco, I hear some companies tell me, oh, well, we don't need entry-level engineers anymore. We'll need senior. And some say the opposite. I mean, how do you think about the way you'd hire differently in the age of co-pilots and that?
First of all, I'm very excited about kind of the new generation. I have a 20-year-old daughter, and I tell you that she's more of an AI expert than I can possibly be. Because a lot of the kids in school right now, they actually, the more forward-looking, they know how to use AI every day in a very effective way. They're fantastic prompt engineers. And so I think I'm actually very excited about sort of the new generation coming in. And I think the answer to your question is more like a question itself, which is how do you define junior and senior? And to me, that is more like you plus your AI. How senior is that combo? And you could be, maybe you worked for a year, but you're so good at AI, and your AI that you're using has been trained on so many years of people's work that you might be able to be more effective than someone that has been there for 5 years and maybe doesn't know AI that well. And so we need to start thinking about AI plus human combo when you're evaluating performance. And then that combo, at that point, gives you a new definition of seniority, in my opinion.
Awesome. Well, thank the three of you so much. Super interesting chat. Marco Argenti, Jackie Canny, and John Rose. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Session 145 with Gary Cohn, Vice Chair of IBM, back out in the main area.
Good.
Yeah.
And I want to give one more shout out to our title sponsor, Invesco QQQ. Couldn't happen without you. Thank you.
We're having a technical meeting with some of your technical folks and a few other companies to try to sort out agentic interworking, which is a huge problem. We don't know how to make
Together.
a ServiceNow agent talk to a Salesforce agent.
Thank you. I'm like, what?
And we all agree at the technical level.